Hi, in the last video we set up a simple scene with desktop capture, webcam overlay and audio from Logic as well as a built-in microphone. This time round I want to do something a little bit more complex. We're going to take an extra video feed from a camera through an HDMI capture card, and we're also going to use an audio interface and a microphone to capture high quality audio. So to show you how to do that, what we need to do is set up a second scene in OBS, and we click the plus icon down here to add a scene, and we're going to call this one Instruments, and you'll see why in just a second. So this is empty. Let's add some sources to it. We're going to add a video capture device. We're going to call this Canon, because that's the make of the camera, and I'm going to select the webcam utility, and once I get these settings correct you should see pop up a video feed, which should be familiar if you've watched any of my previous MIDI instrument tutorial videos. This is a little bit small, so straight away we're going to use transform and fit to screen. And as you can see, it is actually upside down, but we're not going to fix that just yet. We're going to add in a webcam, and because we set this up in the last video, we can just add our existing sources. There we are, and drag this down the bottom right. Now, I think it's a good chance to show you some of the kit that you're going to need to do videos in this way. So I'm going to grab the camera off its tripod and have a quick look at some of the equipment that I'm using. Now, over here we have two HDMI capture cards. Now, the first one I was using is a Blackmagic Ultra Studio mini recorder, and this second one is an Eclaviv, which is a sort of slightly unknown Chinese brand, but it's working well so far. But either of these will do, and there are plenty of other makes available on places like Amazon or Alibaba. So that's the USB capture card, and that takes the HDMI out of our camera and turns it into something feed that OBS can use. We also have a interface here. We've got the Behringer. I'm using the Behringer interface, and we've got and I'm using Roland Rubix as well. And we also have a microphone. You might want to use a condenser microphone. I've got a little bit of noise going on in this room, so I've gone for a dynamic mic instead. And lastly, we have a tripod. Now, we're going to pop this camera back on so that we don't get seasick. And then we're going to deal with the fact that it's upside down. And again, to do that, we want to right click and use our transform options, and we're going to flip it both horizontally and vertically so that the orientation's right for the way I want to play it, so my hand's not coming in from the top of the screen. Also going to zoom in just a little bit. That's good, and the focus is just about right. So that's that focus now. So now we have a second scene set up, and as you can see, we can switch between them just by clicking here. You can also set up keyboard shortcuts to switch between these scenes, and there's a little transition period which you can set here to any number of milliseconds you like, so that it's a smooth fade between them. One thing I am going to add to our previous scene is a little version of our instruments. I'm just going to pop this here, make it a little bit smaller. There we go. Oh, and we're going to have to do a transform on this as well to make it the right way round. There we go. And now as we switch between the scenes, you can see that we've got full screen instruments and then full screen Logic. And we can switch between these as we like. Now it's worth talking about audio now. We need to add an audio source rather, to our instruments, and this is going to be our Soundflower virtual audio device again. And once we add that in, you can see the meter running, and that audio itself is coming from Logic. And here I have an electric piano sound set up, and that's connected to the iPad. But we need to set up something called an aggregate device. And we need to go into Audio MIDI Setup, which you will have seen in previous videos. We want to show audio devices. And what we want to do is create an aggregate device by clicking plus, create aggregate device, and we're adding, in this order, we're adding Soundflower and whatever your audio interface happens to be. In my case, it's a Roland Rubix. And what this is going to do is create a device that has all the inputs and outputs of both of those sound cards so that we can use it in Logic or any other program. I'm actually just going to delete this just now because I already have one set up that I've called Rubix and Soundflower. And then in our Logic audio settings, we want our output device set to this aggregate Rubix and Soundflower device, and our input device set to Rubix 44, which is just the device itself. So now we have audio coming into our sound card, being routed through Logic out to the Soundflower, and then that's coming in to OBS. And it's worth pointing out that if you want to also hear what you're doing, you can add in a bus. We're going to add in another bus, and we want to send that bus out what will be output 3 and 4, which will be our headphone output on our interface. So this is a little bit more involved, but this will allow you to capture all the audio you need from Logic. And to record a video, as before, we simply come down to start recording, do what we need to do, perhaps play, speak a little bit about it, swap between scenes, stop recording, and then we can find our video and have a listen and a watch. I'm not sure you can hear the sound on that one, but you can see that everything that we just did was recorded. So it's worth bearing in mind that doing all of this on one machine, I've found, is quite taxing on that machine. This is an older 2013 MacBook, which runs all of the audio programs to the extent that I need to use them perfectly fine. But once you throw OBS into the mix, things can start to creak a little, and the main place that manifests itself is in crackles and pops in the audio. So I've had some issues with that. I've had to do a few sort of retakes of this video in particular, and the way I've got around that is in fact using a second machine to capture all the video and audio, which leaves this MacBook free to just be an audio machine. And I think that's going to require a short separate video just to show how to set that up. Thanks.